Hey guys, this will be part one of a 2 or 3 part series tearing down and rebuilding a K67 S1000Rr BMW engine. This is my second engine that just blew. We're going to be rebuilding the third one, and here's the parts list that you guys are going to need. First thing I'm going to do is pull the throttle bodies off. You're going to need a T20 Torx 20 bit to remove those band clamps on them. There's 4 of them, one on each cylinder top. And once you get those loosened up, you should be able to pop the throttle bodies off. All right, next we're going to remove the valve cover and the Vanos units. The Vanos are the two big, thick sensors that sit on top of the valve cover. They rest on the camshaft. And I'm going to try and remove the valve cover before I pull those out, which is not what you want to do. So then I find out, oh, valve cover is not going to come off without the Vanos out. So I'm going to have to go back and pull those Vanos units out. I also stuffed some blue tape into the inlet ports on the cylinder head. This is completely unnecessary, just force a habit. Then we're going to pop that off, realize, up, got to pull those Vanos units. So let me pull those out the rest of the way. And then you can remove the valve cover. After I pull the valve cover, I'm going to start working on the right side engine crankcase cover, also known as a clutch cover. A bunch of T25s or maybe T27 bolts that you're going to have to pull out. Next, I'm going to dump oil all over my garage floor, and then after I get that cleaned up, I'm going to finish removing the clutch cover, and you're going to need to replace these bolts. And in the service manual, there's no specific sequence on removing them, but there is a specific sequence on installing them. I'll probably put that right here. After I remove and inspect this clutch case, then I'm going to start working on the camshaft cap bolts. You got to do them in this sequence right here. If you don't do that, you run the risk of damaging your valves, damaging the camshafts, bending valves, etc. So make sure you loosen them in this order. I'm going to go ahead and crack them loose, give them about a 90-degree or a quarter 180-degree turn. And then once I crack every bolt loose in the order specified, I'm going to go back and zip them all out. And here I was picking up the O-rings. You're supposed to buy new ones. You're not supposed to reuse these, according to the service manual. Then checking out my cams, making sure they're in good shape. And next I'm going to remove the timing chain tensioner here. I think that's a 32 millimeter, if I'm not mistaken. Next, I'm going to grab my T50 Torx and remove the guide bolt pins that hold in the timing chain tensioner, those little plastic guides. So you're going to remove these 2 bolts off the side of the engine here. I'm going to zip them off with the electric ratchet. And I'm trying to get the this timing chain loosened to where I can pull the head off of. I believe there's a 10 millimeter nut on the end of that I go back and remove. Don't do this part. I grabbed pliers and tried to yank the guides out of there. The black one definitely will not fit until you remove the head, so don't even try and pull the black one out. The other one, the yellow one on the right hand side there, I was able to sneak that one out, but I've heard a lot of stories of this plastic getting brittle and breaking apart in the motor, so you definitely don't want to chew at them with the needle nose like I'm doing. So one more time, do not do this. Leave that black guide in there until you remove the head. And here I am breaking loose that nut that holds the timing chain gear on there. Like I said, I think it's a 10 millimeter, might be a 12, don't quote me on that. Pop that guy loose, and then you should be able to remove that gear to slide the timing chain off of the head. Once you get that chain out of the way, this is the sequence you need to loosen the head bolts in. Once again, I'm going to crack them all loose and then zip them out with the electric ratchet. Again, very important that you follow the order in the service manual posted on the order that you loosen these bolts. If you loosen them in the wrong order, you run the risk of warping your head. Don't want to do that. And here's where that extended reach magnet comes in handy. I can't really pick the head bolts out, so use a magnet to lift them right out if you can't reach them. And with the head off, there the black plastic timing chain guide will slide right out. And then after that, I'm going to remove the starter reduction gear. This is what the starter slides in and engages with the motor to turn the flywheel. I think there's like 5, maybe 6 bolts in there. Be gentle with prying this cover off. Don't want to damage the mating surfaces. Here I'm just admiring all the metal shavings that I have inside of my motor, trying to clean some of them out. Getting distracted by the disco party. Then you can go ahead and pull out your starter reduction gears. I tried to keep them all in line and then just stuck them in the little cap right there so I don't mess up the order. If you do mess up the order, you can just check your manual to install it back in the correct orientation. Next, I'm going to try and remove the oil feed line, or the oil cooler feed line here. One of my bolts was stripped in there, so I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes extracting this guy, seeing if I can bang it out anyway. Ended up having to take the extractor bit to it. Not gonna lie, guys, what it felt like after probably a good 30 minutes, I finally got the bolt out. There it is. Now with that oil cooler feed line removed, we can go ahead and pull the oil pan off. Just no specific order, you're supposed to remove the bolts according to the manual. So I'm just going to go ahead and zip them all off here. Then use a rubber mallet to give the oil pan a few gentle taps to kind of break it loose. I think there's a couple pry tabs, maybe in the corners where you can also pry it up. But I'm going to go ahead and crack it loose and then pull her on off. Yeah, I was audibly discouraged there looking at the amount of metal shavings in the oil pan. I then proceeded to spend 5-10 minutes cleaning out the pickup tube here. There's a little screen in there that filters the oil before it goes into the oil pump, and mine was totally full of gunk and metal shrapnel. And next I'm going to remove the coolant pump. There is actually a special tool that you're supposed to get shown here. My workaround method was get a few pieces of duct tape, wrap that plastic hose in duct tape, make sure you wrap it good, 6 to 8 strips on there, and then take a pair of vice grips and gently grip it as you kind of twist it off, because you don't want to mar the surface of that coolant hose. If you do, it could leak coolant, not seal up properly. So if you don't get the proper tool, be very careful not to damage that hose or just replace it altogether. So we set that aside. We're going to start working on the rotor cover or the stator flywheel cover. Bunch of, I think they're T25s or T27s. Go ahead and remove all those bolts, and you can pull the rotor out. You're going to need a special flywheel remover tool to pull that off. Shout out to my boy Mo at AK Motors for helping me out with that. Next, I'm going to remove the clutch basket, pressure plates, clutch discs, all that fun stuff. So there's three 10mm bolts on the outside. Go ahead and crack those each loose and then loosen them little by little. They're holding springs in, and you don't want to bend or damage the front pressure plate of your clutch. So just, loosen them little by little, try and keep it even. And then I pull that off to access the clutch nut back in there. And that is actually a size 27mm socket, or I used a 1 1/16 inch. I didn't have a 27mm. There's two grooves on the inside lip of that clutch nut, so right now what I'm doing is kind of sticking a screwdriver in those to kind of bend the security locking tabs on the clutch nut back out, and that's going to allow me to remove the nut off of the crankshaft there. Next, I used a special BMW clutch basket removal tool, link in description.